As I said, good afternoon and welcome to our FAIR implementation workshop this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Today's session will look at the Skills4EOSC and FAIR Impact project, focusing on the minimum viable skills profiles of Skills4EOSC and implementation using FAIR Signposting. I'm just going to give it another 30 seconds or so, because I know we've got about 50 participants registered and we're at about 20 so far. So I'll just give another 30 seconds or so before we get started. So again, welcome to everyone who's just joined us for the FAIR implementation workshop this afternoon. So just to note that this session will be recorded. If you would not like to have your image shared on our FAIR Impact website, please just turn your video off at this point. But I know we have quite a lot to talk about this afternoon, so I'm going to get started and we'll welcome others in as they come and join the session. So good afternoon, good morning from wherever you're dialing in from. Just to note, this session will be recorded and that will be asking a few questions on WooClap to open and close the session. So please have a mobile phone or a laptop ready to answer some questions. That'll appear after I introduce the FAIR Impact project. So good afternoon and welcome to our FAIR implementation workshop series. This series aims to help three key stakeholder groups: research performing organizations, repositories and data service providers, and national level initiatives to become more familiar with FAIR enabling tools, approaches, and methods. Each of the workshops will provide an overview of a specific FAIR enabling a piece of activity, share information and recent developments from both within the FAIR Impact and other initiatives, as well as offering examples of good practice, practical tips and recommendations. As I mentioned earlier, today's workshop will be a collaborative presentation between the FAIR Impact project and the Skills4EOSC project. So a bit on FAIR Impact. FAIR Impact is funded under the European Commission Horizon Europe programme and is one of the Infra-EOS projects. The project builds on the work of the Horizon 2020 FAIR project and is a coordination and support action focusing on expanding FAIR solutions in Europe. The project has 28 partners from 10 member states and in the UK. The project began back in June 2022 and will finish over a three-year period in May 2025. So essentially, FAIR Impact is working to support the vision of a European open science cloud where FAIR data can be shared and reused. Our work focuses on identifying current and emerging tools, methods and approaches, and supporting their adoption. A key aim for the project is to help ensure that useful resources developed by one community of practice can be adopted by others. We certainly feel this is a fair reflection of a FAIR implementation workshop series, which you're a part of today. So as I mentioned, we're just going to start by asking two questions via our online WooClap questionnaire. So if I could please ask for you to either scan the QR code that'll be on your screens now, or you can go to a web browser and type in wooclap.com and type in the event code DJNKDQ. I can see we've got 28 participants on the call today. So I'll just wait until that number goes up slightly in the bottom right-hand corner. It's just two questions to begin with. We want to get an understanding of where you're dialing in from and what organization you are representing. So shortly, I'll move on to the first question, and you'll just need to type that into your device. At the end of this series of presentations, I'll hand over to my colleague Angus White, who will open as part of 3 different presentations. We'll close with another 2 questions on WooClap as well. So please do have your devices ready at the end of the session as well. So I can see that we've got 20 of us, so that's the majority so far. So I know a few more will join in. So I'll just open with the first question. So if you could just let us know where you are joining from today. Last week we had another FAIR implementation workshop. We had 100 join, I believe, in that workshop on FAIRification, and we had representation from all across Europe. As I can see, we have that today as well. So I can see Denmark, France, Bologna, Denmark, couple from Denmark, Scotland as well, Swindon, the UK as well, Skopje as well. I believe that's in Slovakia. Apologies if that is wrong. Please do let me know in the chat as well. And thank you for joining us today. Leicestershire represented as well. Great to see a good representation from across Europe and in the UK itself as well. So we'll just move on to the second question before I hand over to Angus White. So if you could tell us what organization you represent, that'd be great to get an understanding of where you're, what organization, I should say, you're dialing in from today. Great to understand that. And that's before I hand over to my colleague Angus White at the DCC, who will be one of 3 presenters who will be guiding us through the Skills4EOSC minimum viable skills profiles implementation using FAIR Signposting. Okay, fantastic. Great again to see so many different organizations represented at this point. I'll just give you another 30 seconds or so just to enter in your organizations so we can get a really good understanding of who's joined us today. Thank you again for joining us. As I mentioned earlier, we do have 3 excellent presenters who'll be giving us a background on the Skills4EOSC project and how FAIR signposting is being used as an implementation tool as well. This session will be recorded and will be available on the FAIR Impact website for any of your colleagues who were unable to join us today, or for anyone who'd like to re-watch the video as well. We'll be sharing that, should be later on this week. Okay, fantastic. I think at this point, I'll leave that on in the background. So if you haven't entered your organization, you're very welcome to. But at this point, I'll hand over to my colleague, Angus White, who can take over control of the screen. He's a senior institutional support officer from my organization, the DCC. So Angus, over to you.
Thank you, Al. I hope everyone can see that screen now. And
yep, we can see that, Angus.
Great. So I want to start by thanking colleagues in this task from UKIM, CNRS, and University of Marseille. I think some of them may be on the call. Start by saying a little bit more about Skills4EOSC. So basically, we have a bit less money than FAIR Impact, but we've got more partners. So we have 46 partners, 18 countries, self-styled key doers in open science in their area. And we're about 2/3 of the way through the project now. It has a focus on skills, obviously. The objective is to advance open science skills by trying to unify the training landscape to support the European Open Science Cloud. And we respond to 3 related points in the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda, which came out a few years ago. But it's not a top-down agenda. I think these are 3 points that anyone who's been involved in training in this area has experienced lack of clear definition of profiles of the people that we expect to do the work and their career paths, and also fragmentation in training resources and lack of expertise, which is what we're trying to correct. So how we're pursuing this is at the high level, a very straightforward workflow by defining some of the competencies for each of the target roles that we're looking to address. Then through a FAIR by design methodology for developing learning materials, we develop courses and curricula, which we then deliver to a group of so-called master trainers to get these competencies across and built up in the consortium itself, and then beyond that to their own organizations. So we're, as I said, 2/3 of the way through, so we're quite well advanced in this process. It's underpinned by a co-creation approach, so within the project and beyond that. So we're inviting stakeholders to help us to create these things, upload the drafts to the Skills4EOSC community, and accompanied by a feedback questionnaire. And then we also have more direct contact in the events like this. So what is a minimum viable skill set in our view? As the name suggests, it's trying to boil down to the essentials, the skills that are required for doing open science. It's based on a review of competence frameworks and skills resources. So we're not trying to reinvent any wheels. What we're trying to do is distill what's already out there and come up with short, condensed profiles that identify what various actor roles in European Open Science Cloud are typically expected to do. This all begs the question, minimum for what and for who? And so we felt the need early on to contextualize the list of skills by saying what we assume is the open science mission for the role, what outcomes it might be expected to work towards, and kinds of activities involved, and then what skills required to do them. They're not intended to be any form of standard other than high-level guidance to inform curricula, learning paths, and materials that they're composed of. Designed to be adaptable. What we've been doing lately is annotating them with different terms from ontologies that are published and are relevant to this domain. So one of them is the European Skills, Competence and Occupations ontology, which is extremely large and well developed. Terms for FAIR Skills, which is a bit newer and obviously focuses on skills for FAIR, and also the research competence framework for researchers that was published last year. Researchers, as you can guess, are one of the roles that we're focusing on, and really starting from undergrads through to masters and early career researchers, and then onto senior research roles, policy-making roles, both for research and for any area of policy that is aiming to be evidence-based. Data stewards, a key role, obviously, and one on which there's lots of work already been done. Legal and ethics experts and advisors, and this knowledge broker role, which can be the interface between policymakers and everyone else. We've been working on other roles So we've already made good progress with the three on the upper right-hand corner there. And we're aiming to do others. We're very much open to expressions of interest in working with us on these areas. Haven't got that far with them so far. The catalogue of profiles that we've already produced and published are available on this link here, and these slides obviously are going to be available. In fact, they're linked to from the collaborative notes document. So obviously, viable skill sets in this context are about FAIR. We also want them to be FAIR, and they can be used on their own independently. We like them to be used alongside the FAIR by design methodology, which has this overall process flow and is essentially good practice in instructional design combined with applying FAIR principles to learning resources and drawing on previous work that's been done there as well. So that the minimum viable skill sets fit right at the start, so to help define the learning objectives and the target audience. And they can also, by highlighting the resources that they're based on, feed into the resource space for the learning resources themselves. And ideally, we want them to be structured at least at a high level to outline the content. So a very kind of quick overview of what it looks like, not with the intention of expecting you to read everything on these screens. As you can see, there's quite a lot of text, but this is all on 4 to 6 pages. Start with the mission, the outcomes. For the data steward role, the team developing this profile wanted to distinguish between two aspects of that role. So one being the more centralized coordinating role in an institution, research performing organization. The other embedded more at the research coalface, and they decided that the mission and the outcomes are more or less the same. They're obviously going to be nuances at domain level. So then moving on to the activities, which very similar, but worded appropriately for the expected alignment of that role. And the skills and competencies as just short phrases, bullet points. As I say, this is all in the catalogue that's available online. Looking at the ontology work that we've been doing, we've looked at the statements of essential skills and competencies. We didn't, when we were creating these, want to restrict people to any particular controlled vocabulary, but looking at the ESCO ontology and terms of FAIR skills, we've tried to align terms there to our statements. These terms link to their own definitions, so this gives people a link out to more detail or a slightly different way of wording things as another way to feed into the structure of the learning resources. So why or what do we think might be achieved by using FAIR signposting? Well, we wanted, apart from just uploading these to a public repository, we wanted to make them as findable as we could. So by exposing the metadata more effectively, and we'd also hope that we can expose the ontology terms and the links in the link set for the pages that we have on here and in GitHub. And that's basically how we've got to today. And just to summarize the key points, there minimum viable skill sets, trying to describe a diverse set of roles that contribute to an open science mission. They synthesize work that's already been done around competencies. They offer a way of framing at a high level objectives and outcomes that can then be built into the design of learning materials. We want those materials and the skill sets to be fair and open themselves. So we're kind of eating our own dog food, and we want to make them findable using FAIR signposting. Be easy to use them. That's ultimately what we're about. So with that, I think it's about time to hand over to Herbert to say more about FAIR signposting. But I think there's a discussion slot in a while. But if there are any questions for now, I'll hand back to Al, I think. Or I can't see the chat, so I don't know if there are any.
Thanks. That's great. I don't see any questions at the moment. Yeah, so I think if you want to unshare your screen, and then Herbert can maybe start sharing. And as Angus said, we do have a shared document in the shared notes. So feel free to jot questions down there and we'll come back to it. But if there is anything in the meantime, just feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Otherwise, I think we're just moving on to Herbert then. So thank you very much, Angus. And over to you, Herbert.
Okay, I'll try and find my presentation here. I think that's the one. Is that the one? Yep. Yes, that's the one. Okay, so thanks for giving me the opportunity to do a presentation here. What I'll cover in 10-15 minutes, I think, is first of all, what the problem is that is being addressed by signposting, and then also, without getting in too much technical detail, how does signposting go about addressing that problem? So in order to frame the problem, let's have a look at what a scholarly object looks like when it's being presented on the web. And then I'll start there at the left in the middle with the persistent identifier, which we all know scholarly objects have. And when you have a persistent identifier on the web, you know, you can follow that through HTTP redirects to the landing page. But we know there's, of course, much more than just a landing page. There are also content resources, one or more. So, you know, PDF file, a data set, what have you. One or more metadata descriptions in various formats of the scholarly object. And then also other persistent identifiers or identifiers related to this object. For example, ORCIDs, persistent author identifiers for the creators of the object, maybe also terms from an ontology to indicate which type of objects they are, and so on. So that's how your typical scholarly object is presented on the web. But the reality, of course, is that such an object is part of the large web graph. And in there, it becomes very hard to delineate where exactly that object is. And so let's focus here for a moment on the very center of this web graph, which is the landing page that we just saw. And you know, when you've interacted with landing pages, you know that there's a zillion links on there, and there's only a few that lead to these objects or these resources that I just mentioned, to the content resource, the web resource, and then there's a million of other links. And the thing is that as humans, we are pretty good at distinguishing between those that lead to part of the object and to other external resources. But a machine cannot make that distinction. A machine just sees a whole bunch of links and cannot say, oh, where's the content? Oh, is this an internal or an external link? Can just not do that. And so that's the problem that signposting addresses. It wants to delineate in an unambiguous manner, you know, where the resources are that are constituents of a scholarly object on the web. So signposting started in around 2015. I started it with a couple of colleagues that had been involved in a lot of prior standardization efforts for scholarly communication, among others, the protocol for metadata harvesting, but many more. And then in 2020, we published an implementation guideline, which is really where the interest in signposting started to take off, because the implementation guidelines are very concrete recipes, you could call it, on how to implement signposting. Now, signposting is completely standardized, standard-based. It's all based on IETF RFCs, and it uses typed web links to help machines navigate scholarly objects. So what is a typed link? Well, obviously it's a link, but it's a link that is typed. It means that the link itself tells you what the reason of the link is, what kind of resource one can find at the other end of the link. Obviously, because it is a link, there has a web resource at the other end, meaning there's an HTTP URI as a target of the link. And then on such a link, one can also provide attributes of the target resource. For example, what is the MIME type is of the resource that is the target of the link? Is it a PDF file? Is it a zip file? And so on. So there is an official IANA registry of these kind of typed links, and all of those have been defined in formal specifications. So, and out of this entire registry of existing defined typed links, signposting selects just 7 to unambiguously point to a bunch of resources that are constituents of a scholarly object on the web. And I'll explain by going back to the picture we started with. So you see the landing page here again. And then you see that in order to point to content resources at the right-hand side of the picture, we use item links. Again, that's one of the link relation types out of the IANA registry. In order to point to metadata that describes the Scholarly object, we use described by links. In order to point back to the persistent identifier, we use cite as, which is a link relation type that I actually specified in an RFC. In order to point to authors, to their ORCIDs, for example, again expressed as HTTP URIs, we use author links. And in order to express the type of a resource, is it a scholarly article, is it a data set, and so on, we use a type link. Now, we can not only use these type links going out from the landing page to these other resources, but we can also point from those other resources to the landing page. That's, of course, really interesting in case a bot, a machine would land on a content resource. You know, it does some kind of web search, comes up with a PDF, goes to that PDF, and now wants to figure out of which scholarly object is this part. Well, here you are. We point from the content resource with the inverse of the item link, which is collection. And that's what you see here. There's also inverse links for the described by that we saw. It's called describes and so on. So we can point back basically from these resources to the landing page also. So that's basically what signposting does. It uses these typed links, a very select number of typed links, in order to point unambiguously between those resources that make up a scholarly object on the web. And the second part of the solution is we actually need to express these links in a certain way. And there's actually 3 ways to do that. And I'll explain them to you. Again, this is all standard-based. The first approach is to provide these links in HTTP headers. So when communicating with a web resource, there's not only the resource itself that comes across the wire, but there's also headers that come across the wire. So in these headers, you can provide all kinds of information. And one of the headers you can provide is called a link header. And so you see here an HTTP head on a certain resource. You see the curl statement up there, and then your headers that come back. And here you see the link header and several links that are part of that. So the first link, as you can see here, says cite as. So that points to the persistent identifier. The second says author, points to an ORCID. And then we have an item link that points to content file. This link says that it's actually a zip file at the end of that link. And there's more information because it even gives you a profile. What kind of a zip file is it? Well, actually, it turns out it's an RO crate. And then we see here a link that points at metadata expressed as link data JSON. And there's 2 type links here. One says, we're talking about the data set here, but you're currently really on a landing page. That's why there are 2 type links here. So that's how we convey them using HTTP link headers. The nice thing about link headers is you can use this for all media types. Okay, so for example, when your content resource is a PDF file, you can also in the headers, when interacting with that PDF file, provide these kind of link headers. The second approach of conveying these links is by using the link element in HTML pages. And now obviously you can do this only for HTML pages. So you can do this for landing page, for example, but you could not do this for a data set that is expressed in some other media type. I'm not going to give you examples of that because it's basically exactly the same as we saw in the previous slide, only the serialization looks a bit different. And then the third approach is by reference, where basically one publishes a document, a special purpose document that is called a link set, and that link set contains all the links. Again, this link set document has been standardized in an RFC. And so that's the format that is being used to convey those links. So how does this work? Well, first of all, you need to be able to find that link set document. And obviously, signposting eats its own dog food and says, well, we're going to make that discover by means of a dedicated link relation type. And that is called link set. And so, for example, from the landing page, but also from content resources or from metadata resources, we use a link set link to point to the link set. And now the link set is going to express all the links that we talked about before. So both the types of links that emanate from the landing page, but also those links that emanate from content resources and metadata resources. They're all going to be provided in one document named a link set. And here you see an example where, first of all, we discover where the link set is from the landing page. So again, we see that we're accessing the landing page. The headers are coming back. A bit of the HTML comes back. And in the headers, we see a link header again. And it says, I'm pointing you to a link set. And here's the link set. In this example, we have not included the MIME type, but of course, that should be done also. And then the next step is, of course, to go and get the link set. And that's what you see in this example. So obviously, we take the URL that was the target here of the link set link. And now we access that URL. And then you see content type application link set JSON. That's the MIME type of this document. And then you see opening element link set, anchor, meaning the starting point of the link. That's the landing page URI. Site as, we've seen that before. The persistent identifier, type, dataset, we've seen that before. And of course, the document is much longer, but not all the information is shown here. So basically, 3 ways to convey these links: by means of the HTTP link header, in an HTML landing page, or by means of a dedicated link set document. Signposting has seen significant adoption, growing adoption in the last 2 years, really. If you go to the signposting site, you can see a whole list of adopters under the adopters tab. And we'll hear actually now from Sonia about a very interesting new implementation or recent implementation. With that, I think I can conclude.
Great, thank you very much, Herbert. I think it was a really nice overview of the approach. And we're looking forward to hearing now from Sonia about how she has taken that forward. So over to you, Sonia.
Thank you. I hope you can see the slides and we can begin. Yes, you've heard about the minimum viable skills profiles and about FAIR Signposting. Now it's time to put them together in action, right? So I'll be talking a little bit about how we implemented FAIR Signposting for the minimum viable skills profile, and then actually for all the FAIR by design materials that are being developed using the methodology and the training that we provide in the Skills4EOSC project. Initially, the minimum viable skills profile were published on Zenodo as a PDF document, as a project deliverable. And very soon afterwards, the group realized that it's really hard to keep them up to date because they keep improving them, adding information, using the different terminologies that Angus was talking about. So they came to us and we were discussing a better way on how to do it and how to keep this versioning in an easier way. And we decided to actually implement the FAIR by design methodology on the minimum viable skills profiles, and using this methodology and using the tools that we provide to actually create a public GitHub repository that will hold the minimum viable skills profiles as Git pages based on MK docs. In this way, basically, each of the profile is defined in a separate markdown file. And then once you push and commit a change, the MK docs are going to be automatically activated to read the markdown files and create a website consisting of several web pages that describe the profiles and create this catalog that I'm sure Joy is putting the link to it in chat or somewhere so you can take a look how it looks like. One of the nice things about having the profiles in this way is what you can see here on this slide. This is basically a screenshot of one of the profiles, I think the one about undergraduate students. Because we are using this terminology, and this terminology is fed into the GitHub repository, what happens when the pages are analyzed is that the system finds the use of the specific terms that are described in the terminology page. And then basically when you are hovering with the mouse over the term, which is underlined, you can get this black box that you see on the screen, which is the definition of this term. So it's quite easy for people that are meeting the profiles for the first time, maybe are not familiar with some of the terminology, to see what this terminology means and what are the definitions of the terms that are being used, which is it's a very nice feature. But other than that, of course, we wanted to move one step further. And as Angus said, one of the goals for the minimum viable skills is to make them as fair as possible. And this includes the goal of providing a way for machine-based agents to actually understand the content of the minimum viable skills catalog of profiles that we created. Initially, before we started the collaboration with FAIR Impact, what we did is we used the meta fields inside the HTML page to describe the content using the RDA minimum metadata schema that has been developed specifically for description of learning materials. We are still using this. However, when we ran into FAIR Signposting, introduced to us by FAIR Impact, thank you, FAIR Impact, so much. Thank you, Herbert. We decided that it would be great if we can also implement this. And in this way, from the landing page of the MVS website, a machine agent can learn about the catalog, about the different profiles, how to get directly to each of these profiles. For this, we needed to make two steps. The first step was to create a template for the MVS profiles so that it can be easier for an agent to understand the content of the profile. And then in the second step, to extend and automate this mkdoc-based website to implement the FAIR Signposting. So I will tell you how we did these two steps. The first step was to create the template. The template was created by Angus. You can see the template in the special page on the website. It's also published on Zenodo as a separate record. And it's also registered with IANA as an official profile URI for the minimum viable skills profiles. And in this way, we can actually use this template to describe the profile to a machine-based agent. Inside the template defines what is the structure of the profile. So the first part is the mission of the profile, then the activities, outcomes, skills, competences, all of this stuff that Angus was telling you about. Once we had the template, then we could move on to implement the level 2 FAIR Signposting, the way Herbert explained to you just a little bit ago. In our case, the specific things about the FAIR Signposting is that we are dealing with learning materials. So basically what we are trying to describe is a learning object on the web. And in this case, the landing page is actually the home page of the Git pages that are created using mkdocs. And then we have links to all other pages inside this website. Some of them are the MVS profiles that we are interested in, and we would like to describe them all together as one catalog. The metadata that we wanted to provide for the FAIR Signposting was, of course, the authors of the profiles, description for which we use the special citation file format, the license under which they are available, and the type of the content, which, as I said, in our case is learning object. One maybe more specific thing about this application is that we haven't used the CEST field that Herbert was also talking about. Why? Because the Git pages that are created don't have a unique persistent identifier by themselves. What we do is we actually have an automated workflow that enables you every time you create a new release of the website to create automatically a Zenodo record that is going to receive a DOI from Zenodo, and in this way connect a persistent identifier to the content of the website. However, this connection is indirect, and that's why we don't use the CEST field to describe it. So this is how it looks like. Basically, we used the third option of the 3 different ways that Herbert was telling you about. So we used the link set. And on the left-hand side, you can actually see the description of the link set that you get when you are viewing the source of the HTML page, which is the landing page for the minimum viable skills catalog. As you see, it points to a link set JSON file. And on the right-hand side is actually the content of this file presented in a more structured way. You see that we have the anchor, which points to the landing page. We have actually 2 types. One type is that it's a learning object. The other type is that it's a landing page for that learning object. For the minimum viable skills catalog, we have in total 15 authors that were working on the different profiles. And we have in total 14 pages to which we point inside these links and JSON, because we have many profiles defined in the catalog. We use the describe by to provide more information using the link to a citation file inside which we follow the standard schema for describing an object using a citation file. The license points to the CC BY 4 license, and in the related field, we have this link to the Zenodo record, which is actually created when an official release of the web page has been done inside GitHub. So this is how we connect the Zenodo record and the actual GitHub repository from which the Zenodo record was created. For all of this to happen, right, someone needs to create this links.json file. Of course, one option is to do it manually, which is really not a good idea, because you keep adding new profiles, making changes and so on, and you have to keep everything up to date. And you might have many of these profiles and many people working on them at the same time. So that's why from the start, we were thinking on how to do this automatically, right? We were already familiar with Git actions and automated workflows, because as I mentioned before, we are using them to do this automatic publication of the GitHub repository as a Zenodo record. So what we decided to do is extend these workflows with additional jobs, additional steps that are now going to be dedicated to FAIR signposting. So what we have is essentially an added signposting job that goes through these steps, which you can see here on the right-hand side. It actually uses a special library that enables you to manipulate with Markdown, with JSON, with HTML files. It goes through the GitHub repository, reads all of the content, decides based on the configuration provided in the YAML file what is important and has to be part of the JSON, what can be skipped because it's not an important link, reads the profile that needs to be used also from the configuration, and then automatically creates this links.json file and adds it to the repository so that you can have the whole thing before you publish your Zenodo record. This file, which is called mkdocs YAML, resides in the root of our GitHub repository, and it actually holds a bunch of configurations which are mainly describing how mkdocs is going to read the Markdown files and create the website based on their content. What you see here in the bottom is a part, only a small fraction of this YAML file, which inside which we are actually adding our custom configurations for the file, which are used specifically for signposting. So the first one, signposting link set, is actually the definition of the name and the path for the links.json file that is going to be created. The second one, signposting default profile. Actually, you need to provide the URL to the profile URI that you want to use to describe the content that will be inside the JSON file. And the last one, which is signposting exclusions, and this is a list of exclusions, actually describes to the signposting job which are the files inside the repository that should be skipped. They shouldn't be part of the links.json because they are not describing MVS profiles. They are additional files which are used for different purposes inside the FAIR by Design methodology. What happens in the background is that every time you push something, you make a commit to the GitHub repository, this signposting job is going to be activated automatically. It will go through the content, decide whether there are changes. If there are changes, create the new version of the links.json file based on the changes that are done. Initially, we did this only specifically for the minimum viable skills repository because this was the request that we got. But after a little bit of thinking, we actually decided that the way it is implemented, it can be extended to all of the learning materials that can be produced using the FAIR by Design methodology and the FAIR by Design training that we provide. In order to enable this, what we did is actually extend the FAIR by Design methodology templates repository with the additional workflows and Git actions so that this link set treatment of all of the learning content inside one learning object is implemented in every development that is based on these templates. So if you are using these templates as a starting point to create your own learning objects, it doesn't matter how many units, modules, sections, and so on is going to have. The automated workflows that work in the background are going to crawl through the whole thing and create the corresponding links.json. The information looks similar to the one that I showed you about the minimum viable skills profiles. The only difference here is that we don't have a special profile URI because we don't define specifically the content of the learning content of the unit or the module or whatever. So we have the types, it's a learning resource, it's a landing page, there are authors of the learning objects. In this case, there are 27 items, which can be different modules, units inside the learning object. There is a citation file that describes it in more detail. The license is still CC BY 4. And of course, as previously, there is a related Zenodo record. Once you release, automatically as another record is created for your learning materials. The whole configuration things that I told you about before are also applicable here. So you can control which files are going to be part of this link set and which are going to be skipped because you're using them for other purposes. What we did afterwards is also extend the training. So what you see here is a screenshot of the FAIR by Design training of trainers, where we go step by step on how to use GitHub, Markdown, the templates repository and everything to create your own learning materials and publish them on Zenodo to get a PID. So now there is also a separate section inside the publishing stage where we describe how to customize the signposting information, what are the fields for the configuration, how to use them and how to change them to better adapt them to your purposes. If you're interested in this and you would like to try it, or you just want to go to the repositories, take a look at the actions and workflows and maybe take them and adapt them for something completely different, please feel free to do it. These are some of the links that can help you on your journey into reusing the FAIR by Design methodology or reusing parts of it for your own purposes. Of course, don't forget that the main thing that we're talking about today is the minimum viable skills profiles. And when we talk about reusing, we are also talking about co-creation and about your contribution to our efforts. So we would be very, very happy if you are interested in contributing directly to the content of the minimum viable skills profiles. There is a separate page on the website that tells you what are the options and how you can contribute with your opinions, comments. Maybe you want to develop or have an idea to develop another profile and you would like to submit it for analysis to the team and so on. So you can choose any of the methods that you see on the screen. You can create an issue on the GitHub repository, start a discussion on different topic there, You can fork the repository and then pull and push your changes to the original repository and see if they're accepted by the team, or you can contact them directly with your idea. If you want to submit a new profile to the MVS team, then please use the template. There are actually 2 versions of the template. One is in Office on Zenodo. The other one is in Markdown inside the GitHub repository. Anyone you want to use, choose it, fill it out with the information, submit it to the team with one of the methods that I talked to you before. And let's try and create more and more profiles in the future. Of course, we are open to any type of collaboration, any type of co-creation. So please, if you have any ideas, if you want to just share your comments without any further contacts from us or anything, you can also use this link that you see on the screen, fill out the survey that we are going to read and analyze after and try to implement all of your comments. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope you're still with us and maybe you have questions. I will stop sharing now so that Al can take over and move to WooClap.
Thanks very much, Sonia. I'm just checking the chat. I don't see any questions in the chat. If anybody has anything, we have 1 minute maybe for a quick question if anybody wants to raise their hand. I will say if we don't have time to get to them all, you can still put them in the shared notes and we'll try to get to them offline if we don't have time now. But before I hand over to Al, I'll just say thank you very much for the really interesting talk on how a particular technology has been approached and used in a very different context. I think it's been quite inspiring to hear just how you've done it. And it's great to hear that you've got all this stuff available for people to reuse. So I'm sure Herbert's got lots of interesting things that he might be having buzzing in his head. I think hopefully other people do too. So before I hand over to Al just to do the wrap-up thing, I'll just say thank you very much again to Angus White from the DCC, to Herbert van de Sampel from DANS, and to Sonia Filiposka from Skills4EOSC and you, Kim, for that overview. And as I said, feel free to keep using the shared notes and we'll get to any questions we couldn't pick up today. And I still don't see any hands, so I think at that point I can just hand over to Al to do a quick wrap-up questionnaire. So thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joy. Yes, I'll just share my screen again. We'll just have 2 quick WooClap questions that we'd like to hear from you on, and I'll welcome our speakers to comment on any of the responses. So again, just going on to wooclap.com or using your device or laptop. Firstly, what did you get out of today's session that can help you with your own work? Yeah, it'd be great to hear what you've experienced today. If there's anything you can take from today that you'd like to put into your work going forward, our speakers will be delighted to comment on any feedback or comments you have at this point. So again, that's thanks, Joy. It's just in the chat. That's wooclap.com. The password that you'll need to enter is DJNKDQ. It's the same one we used at the beginning of the session. So I can't see any. Oh, we'll see one's joined. Thank you. It says signposting. Perfect. Fantastic. Thank you for contributing there. Yes, I definitely agree on that. Brilliant presentation from Sonia. The templates. Yes, there'll be links posted after this presentation as well, along with the full recording. So please do enter any questions you have into the collaborative notes after this meeting as well, and we will get back to you on those as well if there is anything you'd like to ask any of our speakers today. So I don't know if you wanted to comment on anything coming in, Sonia, at all, that you can see that you'd like to add anything to at this point? Or any of our speakers?
Yes, I'm sure Herbert wants to comment because I see here that people really like signposting. So yeah, we are using it for learning objects, but it can be used for many other things. So please, if you have ideas, come forward and talk to Herbert. He's the man for it.
Very happy to help if anyone is interested in implementing. I think Sonia's use case is really, really cool. I'd never thought this was going to be possible when she approached me. You know, running a GitHub repository, because typically one needs control over the landing page and so on. And they did really a brilliant job putting this together. I really like this implementation a lot.
Great. So I think we're getting really short on time. I would agree. I think it's just been really inspiring to get a creative take on what you can do with this technology, and it's great. And as we heard earlier, I'm sure Herbert's always eager to hear about other novel ways of applying this, so please do get in touch. So I don't know if you want to go on to the next question, Al, and we'll just try to get people out on time.
Yes, thanks, Joy. So finally, and last question before we wrap up for today, what action do you plan on taking based on what you've already heard today? Again, any comments are very welcome at this time, or following the meeting as well. You're welcome to contact any of our speakers or contribute to collaborative meeting notes as well. But yeah, just at this time, if you have any actions you're planning on taking from what you've heard today. And again, we can see signposting is very much at the forefront of people's minds.
I don't know if you mentioned, Al, that of course the presentations with all of the links inside and everything are going to be made available for everyone together with the recording. So
Yes,
in
thanks,
a short while, yes, you will be able to reuse everything you heard about today.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'd certainly encourage you to do that as well. That'll be available on the FAIR Impact website, along with the recording and all the resources from today's session.
There was a comment on the previous question about signposting and FAIR digital objects. And I put a link into the chat to a presentation that addresses specifically that connection.
That's great. Thank you, Herbert. So I'll just give another minute for any further comments at this point. I'm conscious we are a couple minutes over, so thank you again for joining us, everyone, to all of our speakers this afternoon or this morning, wherever you are dialing in from. Again, the links as well as the recording will be shared via the FAIR Impact website. So we'll just give another 30 seconds or so to contribute any actions that you'd like to take at this point. But as I mentioned earlier, please do feel free to use the collaborative meeting notes to ask any questions following the meeting as well.
About Figshare comment here. So as I mentioned, we've seen a significant growing adoption of FAIR signposting recently. For example, Dataverse has it on board now. Invenio RDM, which means also Zenodo, has it on board. DSpace, the recent versions. So a lot of these repositories, these platforms are starting to implement now. So I would not be surprised if Figshare eventually also gets to it.
Great. Well, I think we have captured all of the links, and I think at this point we'll probably have to draw it to a close, just because we are a little bit over time. But I think it is definitely, we've seen a lot of interest in the FAIR signposting approach. We've had a support action where people have been trying to use it in different ways, and it's just interesting to see how it's taking off and going places that were unexpected. And thanks very much to Skills4EOSC for sharing the work that you've been doing to extend this approach. And as we've said before, if anybody is interested, get in touch with speakers and with us, and we're happy to try and point you in the right direction if you need to learn more. But in the meantime, I'll just say thank you again very much to all of the speakers for sharing your experiences. And hopefully everybody today got a little bit of something that you can go away and start to think about and maybe put into practice in your own organizations. And we will probably get this material up within the next day or so. So check the website and you should have access to everything within the next day or so. So thank you very much, and apologies for the kind of short overrun in 5 minutes, but we wish you a great rest of your day, and thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.